To follow along with the written version of this pattern and download the interactive PDF, use the links on screen now, in the description below, or by going to clubcrochet.com/whale. Hey there, it's Louie, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet a very beginner-friendly miniature whale. This was actually one of the first patterns I ever created when I first started crocheting, but I actually never released it because this was before I even made patterns. I really like this pattern, and yeah, it's actually part of a series of whale patterns that you can see on screen now, including a bunch of variations like belugas, a killer whale, a little dolphin, and of course a little cute little narwhal with a horn on its front. I'm even working on a little miniature whale. If you want to find all these whale patterns, you can find them at clubcrochet.com/whale. This is also part of my second season of crochet titled Under the Sea, which includes a bunch of additional Under the Sea themed patterns like our giant anglerfish, our squids and octopi, even a little seahorse and some miniature octopi, and some bonus secret mystery patterns that are coming out later on in this season. I'm very excited about it. If you want to learn more about my Under the Sea season, check it out by going to clubcrochet.com/underthesea. Both those links are going to be in the description of this video, as are all the links that I'll be talking about in this video. So if I'm ever talking about a different video tutorial or something, just check out the link in the description of this video. Okay, a couple of housekeeping things to get going, to get through before we get started with this pattern. The first is that this pattern is designed to be beginner friendly. I went very slow in this tutorial, so it should be pretty beginner friendly for you. I'll go through every single stitch in this pattern. However, if you need extra help and you want to take it a little bit slower, check out my Crocheting 101 series that you can find at crocheting101.com. That is my completely beginner-friendly series that'll take you through all the different steps of learning how to crochet, from holding your stitches to how to do very complex stitches. So it'll take you through the entire series of learning how to crochet. If you need extra help in addition to that, make sure to leave a comment down below if you have any questions, or check out the Discord or Facebook groups that are great resources to use for help. You can attach pictures there and ask for extra help there. You can find links to that in the description. We also do live crochet alongs every single week. So if you want to join in on the live crochet alongs and ask me directly actual questions where I can show you in video how to do it, just make sure to subscribe down below and hit the little bell icon so you don't miss it when we come out with live streams. It's a great way to get extra help and super fun. You can join in and just crochet along with me. Other things, oh yeah, there is a left and a right-handed version of this video available. To find the link to the opposite one, check out the link in the description. But yeah, you might want to use the lefty version if you are a left-handed crocheter. And lastly, there are time codes available on this pattern. You can find them using the links in the description, and you can use those to quickly jump to different parts of this pattern. So if you want to just jump straight to the pattern or jump to round 5 or whatever you want to do, use the links in the description. You can also find them at the bar at the base of this video on the time codes. Okay, well, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. Let's move on and talk about all the materials that you're going to need to crochet this pattern. For this pattern, you'll need the following things. Let's start with our tools. We're going to be using a crochet hook size 4mm or G6 for a crochet hook. This is my favorite size crochet hook to use for the yarn that we'll be using for this pattern, which is worsted weight cotton yarn, but we'll talk about that in just a second. If you're using worsted weight yarn, a size G 4mm crochet hook is best in my opinion, but you can use a larger crochet hook or smaller crochet hook that will help you control gauge, and also be really important if you're going to be using larger yarn. So if you're going to be using bulky yarn, for example, you don't want a crochet hook this small. So just keep that in mind. Use the right crochet hook for the yarn that you're using, and if you have any questions about that, just hit me up in the comments. Besides the crochet hook, we'll be using a darning needle. That's kind of one of these yarn needles like this. It has a really big open hole that makes it easy to put your yarn into. And I suggest trying to get a crimped end darning needle like this. We have these available in the shop, by the way, but these are really helpful for getting in and out of hard to reach stitches. So highly suggested. Besides that, you'll need a pair of scissors for cutting things and stuff. And then you'll need a pencil. And this is going to be used for stuffing your piece up. You can use the back of your crochet hook or your finger, but I find a pencil's eraser is really, really helpful and makes things a lot easier. Besides the tools, we're going to need the materials, and we're going to be pulling from our seasonal crochet kit today for the materials at hand. Now, if you want to get one of these seasonal crochet kits, they are available in the description and includes all the materials to make all of our whales, plus all of the other patterns from our Under the Sea themed patterns, which are like 15 different patterns. It makes a lot. So we won't obviously need our pin, but we will need our yarn. For the yarn, we're going to be using worsted weight cotton yarn in this pattern. It's my favorite kind of yarn to use for amigurumi because it makes your stitches very crisp and clear and easy to see. It's really useful for beginners, but it's also a natural fiber, which I really like. Specifically, we're going to be using two colors. Our main color, today we'll be using Cyan for our main color, and our secondary color, which will be white. Now this is our new Amigurumi cotton yarn, which includes multiply threads. So you can see at the top here, see how like many threads there are on that? That makes your yarn really, really nice. It makes it very strong, easy to see when you're crocheting your stitches, like I was saying before, but it also makes your yarn very vibrant and split resistant. Splitting yarn is when you accidentally pull some of your threads of your yarn when you're trying to crochet with it. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this pattern, but our worsted weight cotton yarn, because it has our multiply threads, which is not really that normal for amigurumi cotton yarn, it makes this really, really useful for complete beginners. So I highly suggest checking out one of these kits if you would like to. Besides the yarn, you'll need stuffing. You won't need very much stuffing. Obviously, the kits have stuffing included. You really won't need very much at all. In fact, I'm going to be using the threads from our piece as stuffing as well to help reduce waste. And you'll need some safety eyes. The kits come with 6mm and 8mm safety eyes, but I'm going to be using 6mm eyes in this video because I find that's the best size for these patterns. Yeah, okay, so I think that's everything that you're going to need. If you want to add a keychain, the kits also come with keychains, and if you purchase a crochet kit, a seasonal crochet kit, it also includes a membership to our website, which includes access to my full library of tutorials, which there are over 300 additional patterns. So it's a really, really good offer, in my opinion. If you want to learn more about a seasonal crochet kit, you can find links to them in the description down below, and use the code HOOKED, HOOKED at checkout, and you'll get free shipping on your first kit. And like I said, it's a great way to support this channel. Okay, well, without further ado, let's get hooking and crocheting our little whale. Okay, so we're going to start with our cyan yarn here, or whatever main color you want to make your whale in, and we're going to start by making the fins. And we're going to start the fins by making something called a slip knot. Now, to make a slip knot, it's basically a special knot that's going to hold onto your crochet hook, and it's actually pretty easy to do. All you need to do is take the tail end with your dominant hand so that it's facing towards the ground like this, and then fold it over the long end attached to the yarn to make a little tiny loop in it. Now fold that loop over where it connects right here so that it's on top of the end attached to the ball of yarn, and then go into the center of the loop and grab the end like this. Hold the tail end with your non-dominant hand and pull it through like so. And that's going to create just a really simple knot on the end of your yarn here, where when you pull this tail end, nothing should happen. But when you pull this end attached to the ball of yarn, it should close the loop up. And we're going to take our crochet hook, place it right into that loop like so, and then pull it tight against the crochet hook. Now you don't want to pull it too tight so that you're kind of like choking the crochet hook. See how I'm like having a hard time pulling the crochet hook in and out? That's a little too tight. You want to loosen it up just a little bit so that there you can just kind of get a little bit of movement there, but it's still attached to the crochet hook. Okay. So to start your crocheted whale, we're going to be making the fins. And to make the fins, we're going to be starting with something called the chain. And a chain is really simply just grabbing the yarn and pulling it through the loop. It's the most simple part of crochet possible. We're going to start by making 4 chains on the hook. Now, to make a chain, we're going to take your crochet hook in your dominant hand. Notice how I'm holding it kind of like a spoon. You would hold a spoon or maybe like a knife. That's, I find, is the easiest way to hold your crochet hook for beginners. So I suggest holding it like that. With your non-dominant hand to hold the yarn, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. I honestly just have it hang over my index finger like this so that I have my index and thumb finger available for pinching my project, and I always like to pinch it very close to the tail right there. But a lot of people do different techniques like wrapping it around your pinky finger to get a little bit more tension and then having it go around your index finger. That also works very well and lets you kind of like pull the yarn up a little bit easier so that it's easier to grab onto with your hook. Any way works. Just, you know, use what you feel is best and maybe try different techniques out when you're starting out to see what works best for you. For a chain stitch, all you need to do is take your crochet hook and yarn over with the end attached to the ball of yarn. That's going to be this end here. So we're going to yarn over with that yarn. When I say yarn over, I mean place the yarn over the crochet hook like this. Don't yarn under, which is when you try to hook onto the crochet, onto the yarn with your crochet hook. So the hook is going over. That's not right. You want the yarn over the crochet hook like so. Once the yarn is over the crochet hook, take your two pincher fingers, your thumb and your index finger of your non-dominant hand, and grab onto the piece, meaning the knot right here, very close to the end right there. Now take your dominant hand with your crochet hook and pull this loop through the loop on the hook. And the easiest way to do that is really kind of scoop it like that. See how I'm like scooping it through? That makes it a little easier to pull it through the loop like that. Okay, that right there is going to be a chain stitch. Right there, you see that little V? That's going to be a chain. We want to make 4 of those chains. So there's the first one. Let's do another one. We're going to yarn over with the yarn onto the hook and then pull that through the loop with a scoop like that. Notice how my chains are relatively loose. They're not like crazy tight. Here, after this, I'll show you how to make it where it'd be really tight so you can see the difference. But there's our first 2 chains. We want 4 of them. We're going to yarn over again and then pull it through the loop. Notice how I changed my grip to hold it a little bit closer and then scoop it under like that. And again, you don't want this too loose. You don't want it too tight. There's a sweet spot in between the two that makes it easy to work into later on. Let's do it one more time. Yarn over and then pull it through the loop like that. Now you should have 4 chains on your hook, and the easiest way to count these is by looking at it vertically like this, and you can count each of these V's. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 total. Okay, so that's going to be how to make chain stitches. Now before I continue on to the fins, I want to show you the anatomy basically of a chain stitch because they're kind of put into a bunch of different parts. So the first is you have the top loop of your chains. That's going to be this loop here at the top of these V's. So if you look at them with it facing downwards, you have the top loop, which is going to be this one right here. And then there's the bottom loop. That's going to be this loop right here. And then there's also a back loop. So if you turn these around like that, you'll see these back loops there. Those are also a part of the crochet of the chain stitch that you can work into. Now, all 3 of those stitches can be worked into to make your stitches correctly in our first row, which we're about to start. But I personally think there's the two best ways to do it is working in either the top loop or the back loop. You can work into the back loop to make very like kind of clean stitches, which I'll show you at the end of this pattern, like the different ways you can do this fin to make it slightly different. But if you're a complete beginner, I suggest just working into the top loop, the one closest to the top right there. Okay, so what I mean by that, by the way, is putting your crochet hook into there when we're working our stitches. All right, so we're going to start with our first row, and there's really only one row when it comes to the fins. And for our first row, we're going to skip our first chain. That's going to be the one closest to the crochet hook where the loop is pulling out. This right here would be your first chain. We're going to skip that one, and we're going to start directly into the second chain from the hook right here. We're going to try to get under this top loop specifically. And into that top loop, we're going to be doing something called a single crochet. We're going to take our crochet hook, go into that top loop so that only one loop is on the hook. I mean, obviously you have your other loop, but you know, one loop of your stitch. And then we're going to yarn over with the end attached to the ball. So I'm going to hold it into my hand like I did normally, and I'm going to pull it over the crochet hook like that, yarn over the crochet hook, and we're going to pull it through the stitch with a scoop like that. We're only going to be pulling through that first stitch, so you now should have 2 loops on the hook. To finish up a single crochet, we're going to yarn over again with the end attached to the ball like this, and then pull it through the 2 loops on the hook. And the easiest way, again, is with a really good scoop like that. That is going to be called the single crochet stitch. You're going to be using that a lot in this pattern. In fact, the body is almost entirely made with just that stitch. The fins, however, are going to be made with 3 different stitches. The single crochet, which we just did, the half double crochet, which I'm about to show you, and the double crochet, which I'll show you after that. Now, the half double and double crochet are they're just different kinds of stitches. There's different ways to make your stitches have a little bit more height, and we're going to be learning that in our next stitch, the half double crochet. For our next stitch, we're going to work into the next chain. So this chain where it's kind of getting pulled out right there, you can see the gap, that is going to be your first chain. The second chain is going to be right here, the next loop over right next to it. That is where we're going to be working our next stitch. For our next stitch, we're going to be making a half double crochet. For a half double crochet, I know the name is really dumb, it's just the way it is. But for a half double crochet, we're going to yarn over onto our crochet hook like that. And then we're going to go into our next stitch after you've yarned over once. We'll go into our next stitch. Now again, our next stitch is going to be right here, the second loop from where that little open gap is. So right like that. So get your crochet hook into that next stitch. Now we're going to yarn over again a second time. So we're going to yarn over onto our crochet hook and then pull that through the chain like that. Now you should have 3 loops on the hook. 1, 2, 3. Now, finally, to finish up a half double crochet, we're going to yarn over again onto our crochet hook and pull it through all 3 loops on the hook. The easiest way, as you might have guessed, is with a scoop. So we're going to go ahead, pull it through that stitch by really scooping it like this, and we're just gonna, if you need to, maybe just wiggle your stitch like so to make sure you're under all the threads of your yarn, because you don't want to accidentally pull one thread out. That's called splitting your yarn, and we don't want to do that. So if you ever split your yarn, just undo the stitch and try it again. I'll probably split a stitch later on, so if you are paying attention, I'll show you when I do that, if I do that, how to fix it. Next up, we're going to be doing a double crochet. So we did our single crochet and our half double crochet, and we're going to finish up by doing a double crochet in our last chain from the on the piece. So our first single crochet was right here. Our half double crochet was right here. Our last stitch, which is going to be a double crochet, it's going to be slightly taller than this half double crochet, is going to be worked into our last chain right here, closest to the knot. So we're going to go only into that top loop there. So for a double crochet and into that last chain, we're going to yarn over just like how we started our half double crochet. Then we're going to go into our stitch, and notice how I'm pinching it very close and using my crochet hook. We're going to go into our next stitch like this, and then we're going to yarn over and pull a loop through that stitch like so. Okay, so now again, you should have 3 loops on your hook. 1, 2, 3. Now what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, and this time we're only going to pull through the first 2 loops on our hook, not all 3, just the first 2. We're going to scoop under those first 2. So there's 1 and 2 like that. Okay, so there's our first step for our double crochet. And now to finish the double crochet up, we're going to yarn over again and pull through the last 2 loops on the hook to finish the stitch. We're going to really scoop it. And notice how I pull my, when I pull my crochet hook, I kind of tuck it under like that. That makes it a little easier to get under your stitch. So I tuck it under and then I scoop like so. And that's going to be a double crochet and actually our last stitch for our fins. You can see we're just making a very tiny little fin there. To finish up the fins, you just want to yarn over and chain 1. So we're just going to yarn over with our crochet hook and pull it through the loop on the hook to create a chain, and that's going to create a little knot at the end. And now you're going to have 2 little tail ends here. You can cut the yarn now, You don't need too long of an end. I would just have like maybe about that long of an end. We're going to be using these two ends to attach it to our body later on. And then once you've pulled it through, you can, or cut the yarn, you can pull it through the loop. You can actually just pull your hook all the way out like this, and it'll pull that loop out. And now you can pull it tight, and it'll tighten it up and create a little knot at the end. And now you'll have these two knotted ends. And this is how your fin should look if you've worked into the top loops of your chains. So you can kind of see how it looks. The basic idea is we're making kind of like a V with a curve in it. Okay, so these are going to be sewn onto the body later on, and you're going to want to sew these, you're going to want to make 2 of these. Now, really quick before I continue, I do want to show you what the difference is if you worked into the back loops of your chains instead of the top loops like we did for this fin. So let me just go ahead and get one started really quick, and I'll show you how to work into the back loops for the chains, and then I'll cut really quick to show you what it looks like to be different. Now, this is totally not very important for your crochet, especially if you're starting out. I would do it just the way we did it right here, but I thought it'd be nice to show you some alternative methods so that you can kind of learn a little bit more through your crochet through this video. So let me go ahead and get one started really quick. Okay, so we've created our chains now, and we're going to do our same process here for our fin, but this time we're going to work into the back loops of the chains instead of the top loops, just so you can see the difference. For the back loops, again, you want to turn your crochet around so you can see these little spines right here. And we'll skip our first spine, which is kind of right where the yarn is, right there. We're going to skip that one and go into the second spine. And to find, or to get your crochet hook into those spines, it can be kind of difficult because the spine, like the little back loop there, is harder to get into with your crochet hook. I usually take my crochet hook, holding it very close to the tip, and then just kind of like get the tip into position, and then use my nail to help pry the loop onto the hook like so. Once you're into that loop, we continue it as we did as our for our first fin. We yarn over, we pull it through that chain, and then yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops to finish the single crochet. Now I'm going to go ahead and do our last 2 stitches just really fast so that I can just show you what this looks like when it's finished. So let me just go ahead. There's our half double crochet, and then finally our double crochet. You can see once you get going, you kind of, it goes a little quicker. And then I'll just chain 1 to finish up this second fin. And let me show you now what the difference is for these fins. So this one on the right is our first one that we made where we worked into the top loop of your chains. And this one on the left is the second one we made where you worked into the back loop of your chains. And you can kind of see the one that you worked into the back loops, it has more of a curve, just slightly more of a curve. And more importantly is the edge looks a little bit cleaner. It kind of looks, the edge of your fin working into the back loops of the chains kind of looks like the top of your fin as well. So it kind of mimics the top and the bottom. It's a little bit cleaner, but it is just that much more difficult where it doesn't really matter that much. And I usually use just the top loops instead because it's a little easier to do. But another big benefit of doing it this way is it curves less when you're finished. So when you're finished with the whale, these fins worked into the top loops tend to have like a bit of a curve. They kind of curve up like this when you're finished, just because it doesn't have as much stability because of how you made your stitch. Whereas the one worked into the back loop of the chains doesn't curve as much. It does curve a little bit, but it's a little bit less noticeable. So there's my 2 cents on working into the back or the top loops. I'm going to go ahead and make a second fin in our first method, this one right here, and then I'm going to come back and we'll work on the tail of our whale, which is going to be a little bit more difficult, but using the same stitches that we've just learned in the fin. Okay, so now we're going to be making the tail for our whale. Hey, that rhymed. And we're going to start the same way as we started with the fins. We're going to start with a slip knot with a somewhat small end, just about that long. This is our first tail end. Our second tail end is going to be actually way longer for the when we make our tail. That's just going to be because it's easier to sew on with a long end. But for our first end, we can keep it short. We're going to get our crochet hook in there, and we're going to start our tails pretty similarly to how we started the fins, but this time we're going to chain 6 instead of chaining 4. So we're going to chain 6 times. So I'm going to yarn over, pull it through the chain. We're going to do 6. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, like the fins, you can work into the top loops, into the back loops, however you want to do it, but I'm going to be working into the top loops as we did for our fins and doing a series of stitches that we actually learned in the fins, but in a different order to make kind of a different look. So we're going to start by skipping our first chain and into the second chain from the hook, just like how we did for the fins, we're going to single crochet 1. So I'm going to go into the second chain from the hook here, yarn over, pull it through, then yarn over and pull through 2 loops, 1 and 2 for a single crochet. Basically exactly how we did our fins. In fact, the first 3 stitches are exactly the same. So our single crochet was the same, and then we'll do a half double crochet after that, where we'll yarn over, and then go into the next chain. Don't forget the next chain is going to be the one not pulled out, so it's going to be right here. Yarn over again and pull it through, and then to finish up a half double crochet, we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops with a scoop to make sure we don't accidentally split the yarn. Next, we're going to do a double crochet into our third chain from the hook. The double crochet we learned in the fins as well. For a double crochet, we yarn over, we go into the next stitch, which again is not going to be this opened one that's being pulled out, but the one next to it right here. Yarn over, pull it through the chain, and now you should have 3 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over again, pull through 2 loops, 1 and 2, and then yarn over and pull through our last 2 loops, 1 and 2. So there's our double crochet. So now we've made a single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet. Basically, we've made a fin, but with 2 extra chains to work with. So the next stitch after our double crochet is going to be another half double crochet into our next chain. So we're going to yarn over, go into the next chain, again, skip that little gap, and go into the next one right here. Yarn over again and pull it through the chain, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook, just like how we did for the half double crochet before our double crochet. So there's 1, 2, and 3, like that. Now, to finish up the first row of our tail, because our tail is going to be made in 2 different rows technically. To do that, we're going to go into our last chain, which is going to be the one right after this half double crochet, and do something called a slip stitch. A slip stitch is basically the smallest stitch you can do. It's kind of like half of a single crochet. To do a slip stitch, we're going to go into the next stitch right here, into the next chain, I should say. Yarn over, pull it through the chain, and then with that same loop that you just pulled through, pull it through the loop on the hook like this. And that's going to create a slip stitch and just like basically connect it to the chain. Okay, so that's going to be the first part of the whale, or of the whale tail, which is going to be technically the end of row 1. So now we're going to make row 2 of the whale, which basically means we're going to be making another one of these fins, but keeping it connected. To make our next part, we're going to chain 5. So we're going to yarn over, pull it through the loop. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and notice how I'm changing my grip as I make each chain, so I'm holding it a little closer. And there's 5. And if you want to count them, you can count those with V's coming out of where that loop is. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For row 2 of our tail, we're going to skip our first chain and single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So I'm going to change my position so that my fingers are pinching right next to that. Go into the next stitch, which again, there's our first chain. We're going to go into the second one right here. Yarn over, and we're going to do a single crochet. So we're going to pull that through the chain, and then yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops on the hook, 1 and 2 for our single crochet. Next, we'll do a half double crochet into the next chain over. So we're going to yarn over, go into the next stitch right here, yarn over again and pull it through like so, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, 1, 2, 3, with a scoop to really make sure we don't accidentally split any of the yarn. Next, we'll do a double crochet after a half double crochet. So we're going to yarn over, go into the next stitch right here, yarn over again and pull it through. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through only 2 loops because this is a double crochet. So we're going to only pull through the first 2. So there's 1 and 2. And then we'll yarn over again and pull through the last 2. 1 and 2, like so. Lastly, we're going to do a half double crochet into the next chain over after a double crochet. So we're going to yarn over again, go into the next chain right here, which is going to be the one right at the end, yarn over, pull it through that chain, and then going over, we'll yarn over again and pull through all 3 loops, 1, 2, 3, with a scoop. 1, 2, oh, here we go. So look, I split the yarn by accident. Notice how I didn't go through all the loops there, so I have this little kind of weird loop right there. That means that I didn't pull this loop under that one. So that's splitting the yarn. If you split it and you're having a difficult time like actually pulling it under that loop, just undo the stitch and do it again. But for me, I think I can fix it by just getting that loop under that like so. And then finally, we will pull that second or that loop through the last loop on the hook to finish up our half double crochet. Okay, so we did a single, half double, double, half double. And then the last part for our tail is we want to go into that last stitch that we made where we did our slip stitch, which is going to be this really pulled open stitch right here next to where we finished our half double crochet. And we're going to do a slip stitch into that. So we're going to go into that last chain right here, yarn over, pull it through that chain, and then through the loop on the hook to create a slip stitch. To finish up your tail, we're going to chain 1, so we'll yarn over and just pull it through that loop on the hook to create a chain, which will create a little knot at the end. And we're going to get a pretty long end, maybe about that long, so it's what, maybe a foot or so. And we're going to cut the end and then just pull this all the way through to create a knot at the end. And we're going to use this to sew onto the body way later on once we've finished up more than half of our body. But now we have all the parts of our whale done except for the body itself. So we have our 2 fins and our tail itself. So I'm going to put that to the side. And now we can get started on the body itself. Okay, so the body of the whale is going to be made starting with something called the magic loop. Now this is a special loop that makes it so we can crochet in the round, which for crochet, working in the round means that we're basically working in a spiral without turning. So here's my finished whale. You'll see this is going to be our first round, and we're just going to keep making our stitches over and over in a spiral without turning, which makes it very easy to crochet this whale without like any complications. But to start it, we're going to be doing something called a magic loop to create this little start where all of our stitches will work into. To create a magic loop, there's a few different ways you can do so. This is my favorite way, and I do have a full video tutorial that shows a few different ways and why I like one more than the other. I'll link it right here. But as a quick tutorial, all you need to do is take the yarn in your dominant hand and make it facing towards the ground so that it's hanging towards the ground. Now with your non-dominant hand, we're going to pinch the yarn in between our middle finger and our thumb like this, and then take this tail end and hold it in with our ring and pinky finger so that it's held in place. Now we're going to go around our index finger and middle finger twice. With the first going around like that, and then the second time around we're going to create an X on the front. See, so we're going to go over the end like that to create an X, and then on the back we're going to have 2 parallel lines just next to each other. An X on the front, 2 parallel lines on the back. We're going to take this end and our tail end here and place it in between our ring finger and our pinky finger like that and close it in, and that's going to keep everything held into place. Now we can take our yarn, our hand, face it backwards so that the 2 parallel lines are facing us. And we can take our crochet hook, go under that first bar, and then hook onto the second bar. We'll pull that second bar under the first one and then loop it around like that. And that's going to create a little loop at the end of our crochet hook. Now we'll go over the first bar that we made and hook onto the second bar that we just pulled under. So the easiest way to do that is really guide it over your crochet hook with your index finger like that. And now we can pull that through the loop that we made to create a chain. The easiest way to do that, of course, is with a scoop like that. So it's going to create a little chain. Once you've done that chain, everything should be held in place so you can pull your fingers out. And now we've created something called a magic loop, this big open loop that when we pull this tail end, it'll pull that loop tighter. Okay, so for round 1 of our whale, we're going to be working into the center of this magic loop as if it was the stitch, the one and only stitch that we'll be working into. For our first round, we're simply going to do 6 single crochets into the center of the magic loop. Now we made a single crochet in our fins, but we worked it into a chain, so it was a little bit different. For a single crochet worked into the magic loop, we're going to take our crochet hook and go into the stitch. In this case, the stitch is the magic loop itself, the actual hole in the center. So we're going to go into the center with our crochet hook like that. And then we're going to yarn over with the end attached to the ball of yarn, like so. So it goes over our crochet hook, and we're going to pull that under the loop like that. So now you have 2 loops on your crochet hook. Now going over the stitch, we're going to yarn over with the end attached to the ball of yarn again, like this, yarning over my crochet hook. And then I'm going to pull that through the 2 loops on the hook. Notice how I'm keeping all these loops very close together so that there's not very much of a gap in between the loops and my crochet hook. I'm keeping everything pretty tightly tensioned. That's called keeping a tight tension. Now, controlling tension and stuff is something that comes with time, but just so you know that it is better probably to have a bit of a tighter tension than a super duper loose one, but you don't want it to be too tight, so there's obviously a caveat about that. Once I've yarned over my crochet hook, I have my 2 loops on the hook. I want to pull that loop through the 2 loops to finish the single crochet. We're going to do a scoop like we did on our tail, like that, to pull through those 2 loops. And that's going to be our first single crochet in round 1. Now, for our single crochets, we want to do 6 of these. So there's our first one. Let's do another one. Going into the stitch, yarn over, pull it under the stitch, then going over the stitch, yarn over, and pull through the 2 loops, 1 and 2, like that. So there's 1, 2. We want 6 of these. So here will be our third, and then our fourth will be in same stitch. And I'll show you how to count these in just a second. Now we want a 5th one. And then finally a 6th single crochet into our magic loop. Now, to count your stitches to make sure that you have 6 completed single crochets, if you look at the top of your stitches, if you turn it like this and look at the top, you'll see these V's where this loop is coming out of. That's going to be your first V. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are our 6 single crochets. In round 2, we're going to be working our stitches under both of these loops, but I'll show you that in just a second. You can also look at the side of your stitches too to find your 6 single crochets. Okay, so there's our 6 single crochets done. Now the last thing you want to do for round 1 is you're going to pull this tail end tight, and it's going to tighten that hole up. But before I pull it all the way tight, we do want to pull a little strand of extra yarn, and this is going to be used as a stitch marker. It's a good way to make it clear where the rounds of your piece end and begin, so that way you can continue working in a round in a spiral, and it'll be easier to count your stitches. To do that, you just need a simple strand of yarn in a completely different color, just some kind of contrasting color. You'll take the end of that yarn and put it right through the center of your loop like that. And then you can pull the tail end of your magic loop to tighten around that, like so. Okay, once you have that yarn pulled around, you can go ahead and fold it over your piece right after your crochet hook like that. And that's going to create a little tiny line in your crochet that'll make it very clear where the end of the round is. And this is going to be very easy to remove at the end of your piece, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Now the only thing I want to continue doing before we continue to round 2 is I do want to pull this tail end a little bit tighter just to hold everything into place a little bit better. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 1. Congratulations. Now we're going to work into round 2. For round 2, we're going to be working our stitches into the top 2 loops from all of our single crochets from round 1. We're going to start in our very first single crochet that we made in round 1, which is going to be right here. This is going to be the last one that we made because our end is coming out of there, where our first one is going to be all the way around to the other side. When we work our next stitches, we're going to be working under both loops of these tops of our single crochets. So both of them like this. See how my needle, this actually might help you if you get your needle just to like help you guide where your crochet hook's gonna go into. You're gonna go under both of these loops of your stitches. The first one is always the most difficult one to get into. After that one, it gets a lot easier. But we want to find where our first stitch is. Now, if you want to count backwards from where your loop is coming out of your stitches, 6, that's probably the easiest way to find the first of your single crochets. So we'll count backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to go and put our crochet hook, or our needle right under those 2 loops so that you know that's where your crochet hook is going into. Okay, so for round 1, we're going to work round 2 rather, we're going to work an increase into each of these stitches. An increase in crochet just basically means we're going to work 2 single crochets into the same spot. Into the exact same stitch, we'll make 2 single crochets. So we'll go ahead and get our crochet hook into that stitch. Again, don't forget you want to get under both of those loops. The easiest way to make sure that you're under both those loops, get your crochet hook in place like this, and then just kind of wiggle your piece and kind of scoop your hook into there. Eventually you'll get under both of those loops at the same time. Now for a single crochet, again, we're going to yarn over onto our crochet hook and pull it under that stitch. To get under that stitch, twist your crochet hook like this and scoop it like that to make sure you don't accidentally pull some of the wrong threads through. That's going to be the first part of our first single crochet. We have 2 loops on our hook now, and we can yarn over and pull those through those 2 loops like that to finish our first single crochet in round 2. Now, like I said, round 2 consists of increases in every stitch around. That's going to be 6 increases total, and each increase includes 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So now we want to work a second single crochet into that exact same stitch that we just worked our first one into. To find that same stitch, the easiest way is look for the V of your single crochet here, where that's going into, right there. That's going to be the exact same stitch you just worked into. And we're going to be making a second single crochet into that same stitch. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go into that same exact stitch by poking right through where that V is, right like that, and then just poking it in. Notice I poked it down and out like that. Once you're into that stitch, we can yarn over, pull through the stitch. We're going to do our scoop to make sure that we really don't accidentally split our yarn, and then we'll yarn over again and then pull through the 2 loops on the hook, 1 and 2. And that's going to create our second single crochet and the end of our first increase in round 2. Now, like I said, round 2, we want to do that into every stitch around. So next we're going to work into the next stitch over, which is going to be right here under these 2 loops. So when your last stitch was right there, our next one's going to be 1 over right here where there's no stitch coming out of. Okay, so we're going to go into that next stitch over right here, put our crochet hook under those 2 loops, and then yarn over, pull it under the stitch, and then we're going to finish up by yarning over and pulling through 2. But really quick, before I finish that stitch, one nice thing to do right now so that we don't have to do it later is hide our tail end from our beginning color into the stitches. So this way we don't have to hide it later and our piece won't come apart. But if we don't hide it, eventually our piece might come open and undone. So you want to be very careful with that. To hide it into the stitch, we're basically going to work this tail end between the 2 loops on the hook and the end attached to the ball of yarn. So this is going to be the end attached to the ball of yarn. So we're going to take our tail end here and just fold it over so that it's between the 2 loops on the hook and the end attached to the ball of yarn. And then we'll take the end attached to the ball of yarn and we'll put it over our crochet hook like this and then pull it through the 2 loops to finish that single crochet. And now that tail end, see how it's being held into place. We can pull it a little bit tighter. And let's work around it again for our next single crochet, which is going to be our second single crochet of our second increase. So we want to go into the same stitch we just worked into right here, poke right through, yarn over with the end attached to the ball of yarn, not this tail end that we're about to cut. We're going to yarn over at that, pull it through the stitch. We're going to really scoop it under, and then yarn over again and pull through 2 loops. And notice how I just kind of automatically worked around that tail end since it was just held into place. Once you've worked around it a few times, you don't really need to work around it anymore. If you'd like to continue working around it, you totally can. I usually work around it for the entire first or second round of stitches just to make absolutely certain that it's tied in place, but it's not really necessary. What we can do instead is we can just cut the yarn pretty short, maybe about leaving, I don't know, about that long of an end. You can even make it shorter if you want to, and it shouldn't come undone. Now we'll hold all these other tail ends, including our tail end from our stitch marker right here, off to the side so that we can just ignore it as we continue our stitch. All right, so we're going to keep going around. We've done 2 increases. By the way, if you want to make sure that you're on track, just count the top of your loops there. We've done 4 stitches, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to work into the next stitch right here and do 2 single crochets for our next increase. So into that stitch, we'll do 2 single crochets. So there's 1 into that same stitch, and then 2 into the exact same stitch for our third increase. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3 increases, aka 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then after that 6 is our little yellow yarn telling us that's the end of the round. Okay, we want 12 stitches total, aka 6 increases. So let's do our 4th increase and our 7th and 8th stitch. So here's our 4th increase into the next stitch, single crochet 1, and then into the same stitch, single crochet 2. Okay, just 2 more increases. So now into the next stitch right here, single crochet 1, and into the same stitch, single crochet 2. Okay, and then our last stitch right here is going to be right before our yarn. We'll do single crochet 1, and into the same stitch, single crochet 2. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 2. Let's count our stitches really quick to make sure that we're on track. There should be 12 stitches around. So we can start count from where this loop is coming out. So I'm just going to pull my loop out a little bit, and we can start counting from there. So we're going to count 1, that's going to be this V. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll go ahead and put my needle in there just to keep it in place. And then 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that one right here is going to be our first stitch, and we are on track. Okay, we can start going a little bit quicker now. Let's pull our stitch marker up and continue on to round 3. So notice how I pulled my stitch marker over, and now I can work around it as if it's not even there. So I'm just going to hold it into place and just continue working around as if it's just not there at all. So that way it gets held into place and we can keep track of where the end of our rounds are. For round 3, we're going to do a single crochet into our first stitch, which is going to be the stitch right after this yellow yarn, and then an increase into the stitch after that. So a single crochet into our first one, and then an increase, aka 2 single crochets into the one after that. So let's do our first stitch right here. There's 1 single crochet, like that. And then into the stitch after that, we'll do an increase. So we'll go into the next stitch over right here, do our second stitch, which is a regular single crochet, and then another single crochet into the same stitch for an increase, into the exact same stitch. So notice where that V is going in, right there. Pull through, turn over, and pull through 2. Okay, so we want 1 single crochet and then 1 increase. And we're going to repeat that process 6 times around. So we're going to keep doing that repeat, 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, 1 increase, all the way around until we get to the end of our round. And that's going to increase us up by 6 more stitches. So for round 1, we had 6 stitches around. For round 2, we had 12 stitches around. In this round, after doing 1 single crochet and then 1 increase, repeated all the way around, we'll go up to 18 stitches around because we're adding 6 more stitches to the round end. Okay, so there's our first repeat, 1 single crochet, 1 increase, aka 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So let's do that again. This is our second repeat, 1 single crochet into our next stitch right here, like that, and then an increase into the stitch after right here. So 1 single crochet in the first one, and then 2 into the next one. So there's 1 and 2 into the same stitch. 1, increase, 1, increase. Okay, let's do our third repeat. 1 single crochet into the first, and then an increase into the next. 1 and 2. Okay, let's keep doing that around. Here's our fourth repeat. Single crochet 1, and then increase 1 after that. 1 into the same stitch will be 2. Okay, let's do our next stitch. This is going to be our fifth repeat. Single crochet 1 into the next stitch, and then increase into the stitch after right here. There's 1, into the same stitch is 2. Okay, one last repeat. Single crochet 1 into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the stitch after, aka an increase. So there's 1, into the same stitch will be 2. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 3. You should now have 18 stitches around. I'm going to pull my yarn, my color up so that I can tell where the end of the round is. So I'm just going to fold it over our yarn and then hold it in place with my index finger of my dominant hand as we go into round 4. Before we go to round 4 though, let's count our stitches. There should be 18 stitches around. We're going to count from where our last loop is. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 is going to be right here, right after where that bar is, showing where the end of the round is. So we're on track. Okay, now we're on to round 4. For round 4, we're going to kind of slow our increasing down. So we keep doing 6 increases for each round for our first 3 rounds. But now in round 4, we're only going to be doing 3 increases. So if you're doing the math right, if you had 18 stitches in this round and we're going to add 3 more increases, we're going to have 21 stitches by the end of round 4. What's important though is that those increases are all going into like a very so that they're evenly placed around our piece. So to make them evenly placed, we're going to be doing 5 single crochets and then an increase into our 6th stitch. So 5 single crochets and then an increase, and then we'll repeat that process 3 times total. So we're going to do that and then do it again and then do it again to get to the end of the round. So let's go ahead and get that started. We're going to start by doing 5 single crochets. We're going to find our first stitch after that stitch marker right here and place our crochet hook into place and then just kind of poke it in so that we're under both those loops. And we'll go 1, there's 1 single crochet, and 2, and 3. Notice I'm going into the next stitch for each one of those. 1, 2, 3. Here's 4. And then the next stitch over will be right here. There's 5. So 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then an increase into the next one. So an increase again is going to be 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So into the next one, we're going to do 1 single crochet, and into the same stitch, 2 single crochets. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So we're going to repeat that process 3 times total. So that will be the end of our first repeat. Let's do our second repeat. That's 5 single crochets and then an increase. So second repeat will be 1 single crochet, 2, 3. Notice I'm going a little quicker now. 4 and 5 single crochets, and then an increase into the stitch after right here. There's 1 and 2 into that same stitch. Okay, so that's our second repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets, and then an increase, 1 and 2. Now into our last repeat here, 5 single crochets and then an increase. Last repeat will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then an increase into the last one right here will be 6 and 7 into the same stitch. Okay, so let's count our stitches really quick before we continue on to our next round. And I want to show you what the difference of a single crochet versus an increase is so that you can kind of start to notice the difference, which is going to be really helpful in your future crochet. So the first thing is let's count our stitches. So we're going to count back from where the loop is coming out of our crochet right here where our crochet hook is attached. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. So we'll go ahead and put it right there. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 right after where our stitch marker is, which is perfect. That's exactly how many stitches we want. Now the next thing I want to show you before we continue on to the next round is the difference between single crochets and increases in your piece, so that way you kind of start to notice this. For a regular single crochet, you'll notice just one V right here. So under the top V, you'll notice a V to indicate that it was a single crochet. So one V like this means it's just a regular single crochet. So 1 into the 1 stitch. If you see 2 V's going into one spot, that means it was an increase. So there's 2, 1 and 2 going into one space. So here's another increase from our last round. There's 2 V's going into one spot, whereas the one right before it is just 1 V going into one spot. Ignore these little bars in between. That's kind of how you indicate where the next stitch was. Okay, so that's how you can indicate where increases are. And if you really start to notice, especially for this pattern, is that these V's start to line up with each other to make sure that everything is evenly increased, so that it's increasing at a consistent rate, so that it makes it round, basically. Now, later on in this pattern, we're going to be using increases to shape our piece so that the back of our whale is a little bit bigger than the front of our whale, so that it kind of makes a tail. But that is very good to know for your crochet going forward, that if you keep them consistent, you'll start to create a circle. Okay. I hope that I hope I'm not going too slowly, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. And let's continue on to round 5. Now round 5 is actually really easy. All we're going to be doing for round 5, after I pull my stitch marker up here, is doing 1 single crochet into every single stitch around. Just 1 single crochet in every stitch. There's no increasing at all in round 5. So we're going to go into the next stitch right here and do a regular single crochet like that. Now at the end of this round, after doing a single crochet in every stitch around, we should have 21 stitches. So if you want to count your stitches, count them one by one. So there's 1. We'll go into the next stitch right here, which will be 2 and 3, into the next one, and continue on. And we'll have 21 stitches at the end of this round. Now, while I go here, I do want to do a little secret. So if you're watching this, I don't think a lot of people watch these parts of the pattern where I just do single crochets into every stitch around. So if you are watching, I want to do a super secret giveaway. So if you'd like to enter for a secret giveaway, to win, let's go ahead and win our pin from our from our seasonal crochet kit. If you'd like to win a cute little pin here, all you need to do is comment down below with an emoji that is completely random. Let's see, what emoji could we do? Let's do a strawberry. Comment down below with an emoji of a strawberry. That way I can kind of like tell which comments we're entering the giveaway. And don't say anything about the giveaway unless you really want to. But don't say anything about the giveaway and just comment a strawberry in the comments down below. That way I know you watched this part of the pattern, and I'll give away a free pin in a few weeks once this video gets a little bit more traction and more people enter the giveaway. And I'll choose one person at random and reply to their comment and post something in the community channel to let them know that they won. And yeah, we'll give away a free pin. Okay, well, let's go ahead and keep secret, and we'll continue on to our piece and finish up this round. Okay, so this is going to be our very last stitch in the round. That's going to be our 21st single crochet. So we should have 21 stitches around. If you want to count your stitches, just count the top of your V's there. And we shouldn't have had any increases, so we didn't go up in our piece at all. We can pull our stitch marker over here and continue on to round 6. For round 6, we're going to be adding one increase, just one increase into this piece. And what we're basically doing here is we're slowly making it so that the back of the piece has a little bit more increases so that it makes just the slightest amount of a tail. So that's our idea there. So to do that, we're going to do one single crochet into, or we're going to do, two single crochets and then our increase into our third stitch. So 2 single crochets and then an increase, and then the rest of our stitches are just single crochets. So let's go into our first one here. This will be our first stitch, will just be 1. And our second stitch right here will be 2. So there's 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and then an increase into our third single crochet right here. So we'll do 1 single crochet and then another one into the same stitch for an increase. And 2. Like that. So there's 1, 2, and then an increase. And then to finish this round up, all we need to do is do single crochets all the way around until we get to the end of the round. There should be 18 more single crochets, so if you want to count your stitches, just keep counting to 18 more single crochets. At the end of this round, you should go up from 21 stitches up to 22 stitches around. So you should have 22 stitches by the end of, what are we on? Round 6, by the end of round 6 here. Now really quick, before I finish this round up, if you haven't yet, please like this video down below and subscribe to the channel. It's a great way just to get notified when we come out with other patterns, but it also helps this video get recognized by the algorithm to get pushed to other crocheters. So if you like what's going on here, please like this video down below and obviously subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Okay, so we're just finishing up our last single crochet right here, and we should have 22 stitches around. So let's go ahead and count our stitches really quick just to make sure. So we're going to start from where our loop's coming out. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think that was 18. 19, 20, 21, 22. Yes, so we're on track. That's our 22nd. Okay, now before I continue on to round 7, which is going to be our last round using our blue or cyan or whatever main color you want. After that, we're going to be changing to white yarn. But before I continue on, I want to show you the difference between the front or the right side and the wrong side of your crochet, because there is actually a right and wrong side. The right side is the side that we're looking at right now. So notice all these V's. So the way that we've been doing it. However, if you have had this inside out like that as you've been going around, which might happen automatically, you'll notice the wrong side of your stitches show these little bars in between all of our stitches, which is going to make your life a lot more difficult. It's going to be more difficult to count your stitches, and it just doesn't look, in my opinion, as clean. So I always fold it inside out like this to make sure that the V's aren't on the outside. So that's going to be called the right side of your stitches, and then the wrong side of your stitches. This is most important when you're working in the round like we're doing right now, because if you're working flat and turning after each round, you're going to see the wrong side and the right side of your stitches based on the round that you're on. But for our piece, all of our stitches should look like the V on the outside, and then the wrong side should look like this with these little bars in between. Okay, so there's my little caveat. All right, so let's pull our stitch marker up and get our loop there. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to continue on to round 7, our last round in cyan. For round 7, we're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase, and then 1 single crochet, a second increase, and then continue doing single crochets 17 times to get to the end of the round. This is going to increase us up a little bit more at the back of our piece to make the tail of our whale. So we're going to do 2 single crochets. Here's our first one. There's 1, and then 2. So 2 single crochets, 1 for each stitch, and then an increase stitch right here. So we're going to do 2 in the same stitch. So we've got 1 single crochet into that stitch. Oops, get my crochet hook back in there. And then another one into the same exact stitch. So follow that V into the same stitch for our first increase. So 2 single crochets and then an increase. Again, look at the V's to notice if it's a single crochet or an increase. An increase is going to have 2 V's in the same stitch, whereas a regular single crochet will just have 1. Okay, so there's our increase. Then we'll do a single crochet after our first increase right here. And then another increase after that single crochet. So right here, we'll do another increase. So there's 1 single crochet and 2 in the same stitch. And I've got my cat's fur all over the place. All right, so there's our 2 single crochets, an increase, a single crochet, another increase. And now we'll finish this piece up by doing 17 single crochets to get to the end of the round. So we'll just start doing single crochets all the way around. Now I am going to stop right before our last stitch because we're going to be changing our color to white after the end of this round. So we'll keep going around. Now, actually, I want to say a couple of things. So let me show you. Let me just finish this round up, and then I'll explain how you can make this stripe really, really clean if you wanted to as well. But let's go ahead and finish this round first. So we have 17 single crochets around in our piece. I mean, to get to the end of the round. There's going to actually be 24 stitches total at the end of this round. Okay, so we're at our very last stitch here. This is going to be our last single crochet, and in our last single crochet, we actually do want to change colors to white. So before I do that last stitch, let's go ahead and grab our white yarn. A brand new ball of yarn, how fun. And we're going to take this white yarn here and just hold on to it just for a second. I'm just going to keep it in my non-dominant hand. We're going to start our single crochet into our next stitch. So we're going to just start the next single crochet by going into the stitch, yarning over, and pulling a loop through. So you have 2 loops on the hook and 1 attached to the ball. Now we'll take our new color, our white, and we're going to place it onto our piece in between the 2 loops on the hook and the end attached to the ball of yarn. And notice how I'm holding it down with the index finger of my dominant hand. I'm holding it in place. So you want to hold it in between those 2 loops like that. Okay, now take your index finger of your non-dominant hand and go in between the 2 colors and then pull the white one under the color. So it's like that. So it makes a little kind of spiral there. And then take your crochet hook and yarn over with your white yarn and then pull it through the 2 loops on the hook. Notice how I'm still holding it down with my index finger of my dominant hand, and then I release it just as I'm pulling those 2 loops through with our new white color. Now we can pull the cyan a little bit tighter to kind of tighten the crochet hook up, and that'll be the end, actually the end of our round 7, and we've changed colors successfully now. Okay, and you should have this white tail end on the inside. Now it shouldn't come undone unless you pull this loop out, so just don't pull that loop out and we'll be all right. Now before I continue on to our next round, a couple of things. The first one is we can cut our blue yarn pretty short now. Just cut it loose and we'll just hide this on the end and the inside, and we can actually just be done with our cyan. We don't need it for the rest of this pattern, which is kind of nice. The next thing we want to do is we'll hide this tail end just by tucking it on the inside, and we'll fold over our stitch marker to continue on to the next round. But before I continue on to the next round, I did want to show you just a special advanced technique for if you wanted to kind of up your crochet just a little bit. Now, I don't usually do this, but it is kind of nice to see the difference. So I wanted to show you something called the perfect stripe and how you can use it to create a very clean difference in your crochet. So you might notice this is the one that we're currently working on. Notice how these V's on the bottom here are kind of a little messy, but it's not really that noticeable, especially if you're first starting to crochet. But notice how this pink one here has a very clean separation between the top and the bottom where the colors change. That is by using a technique called the perfect stripe method, which I have a video for right here. To do the perfect stripe method, you'll have to do that in the last round that we actually just finished. So in round 7, you'll have to replace that round by doing half color changes for each stitch. Now, I highly suggest checking out that video tutorial so that you can learn how to do that perfect stripe if you want to add it. But if you don't want to add that perfect stripe, there's not really a big deal. You don't need to. I just wanted to keep that, to make that obvious so that if you did want to learn how to crochet the perfect stripe, this could be a perfect opportunity to do so. But yeah, okay, let's continue on, however. And we pulled our stitch marker up, and now we are on to round 8. For round 8, we're going to be learning how to do a stitch called the invisible decrease, which is a very special decrease that is very hidden and hard to see your stitches. It's very clean and a very good way to remove stitches from the round. So where an increase, like this one right here, adds an additional stitch for your round, a decrease does the opposite. It pulls one stitch away from the end of the round to decrease the stitch count. So our stitch count in our last round was 24, and our stitch count in round 8 is going to be 22 because we're going to remove 2 stitches by using invisible decreases. All right, to start round 8, we're going to start by doing 2 single crochets. Pretty simple. So we're just going to go into the next stitch here and do 1 and then 2 single crochets as normal. Now we're going to do in our next stitch an invisible decrease. For an invisible decrease, we've normally been going under both loops like this with our crochet hook. We've taken our crochet hook going under 2 loops. But for an invisible decrease, we're actually going to go under only the first loop right here, the front one. And we're going to want to go under this front loop and the second front loop at the same time. So both of these front loops worked into simultaneously. To do that, we're going to take our crochet hook and go under the first bar and then loop it around so that we're into position under the second bar and push through like that. So we'll be under 2 front bars at the same time. And then we're going to do a single crochet like we normally been doing for the rest of our piece. Let me show you slowly and in detail with our crochet hook. We're going to take our crochet hook, place it right under where that first bar is, just right under it, and poke it up. You might need your nail to help guide the loop over your crochet hook like that. But notice how I'm only under 1 front bar. Then we'll take our crochet hook, flip it under. So I kind of like twirl it to get it into position right under the next front loop and then push up through that one as well. Okay, so now we're under 2 front loops at the same time, and we just need to use our white yarn and do a single crochet under those 2 front loops. So we're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 front loops. The easiest way to do that is really try to scoop it. Twist your crochet hook in a little bit and then scoop it like this to get under both of those front loops. And then finish up the invisible decrease by yarning over and pulling through the 2 loops on the hook with another scoop, 1 and 2. Okay, so that's going to be 2 single crochets and then 1 invisible decrease. There's other ways to do decreases, by the way. If you don't want to do the invisible decrease, check out this video here that'll show you a few other methods that you can do to decrease that might be a little bit easier if you don't feel comfortable with those invisible decreases. After doing your first invisible decrease, we're going to do a single crochet into the next stitch over. The hard part about the invisible decreases is that it can be a little bit difficult to tell where your next stitch is. This stitch right here was where we did our invisible decrease. You can kind of see if you look at the top how it's like pulling it open and kind of out, which means that was our last stitch that we worked into right here. Our next stitch is going to be right next to it right here, and in our next stitch we're going to work under both loops to do just a regular old single crochet. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go under both loops of the next stitch right here, yarn over, pull it through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 for just a normal old single crochet. Okay, 2 single crochets, invisible decrease, 1 single crochet, and now we want to do another invisible decrease. So for our second invisible decrease, we're going to take our crochet hook, go position right under the first front bar, and push it up. So there's 1, loop around to get into position under the second front loop, and push up for 2. Now we're under both front loops simultaneously. Now we can yarn over and pull it under those 2 front loops by twisting our crochet hook in and then scooping it up like this. And just take it nice and slow. You don't have to pull really tight. All right, then we want to yarn over and pull through the 2 loops to finish that single crochet to make that second invisible decrease. So there's 2 single crochets, invisible decrease, single crochet 1, invisible decrease 1. Now the rest of round 8 here is just a single crochet into all the stitches around to get to the end of the round where the blue stitches stop. That's going to be 17 more single crochets working into both loops. Now again, this next stitch is kind of hard to see where it is, but it's going to be right here after where this big bar is being pulled out. So right here will be the next stitch around. And we'll just keep doing single crochets all the way around. So there's 1, 2, and just continue that around. There should be 17 total as you go around. But yeah, that's kind of nice and easy. Hey, again, like and subscribe if you haven't already. But if you really like what's going on here and you would like to support this channel, please consider a Club Crochet membership. Members get early access to future patterns. They get access to my exclusive library of tutorials, including all my additional whale patterns. And they even get discounts in the shop and access to preview patterns. You get a whole bunch of stuff. And well, anyhow, I'll talk to you more about that at the end of this video. But consider a Club Crochet membership. It's a great way to support this channel, and you get a lot back as well. Okay, so this is going to be our last single crochet. You should have 22 stitches around if you want to count your stitches. This time around, it's a little bit easier to count your stitches because all you need to do is count the white stitches at the top. So if we want to count them around, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Perfect. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 8. I've pulled my stitch marker up now, and we're going to continue on to round 9. Now, round 9, I will be honest, is just a little bit tricky. And that's going to be because we're going to be adding 4 more invisible decreases around in our piece, and we're going to be doing them at kind of separate intervals to make it so that it decreases evenly, but it decreases more in the back so that it pulls the back in so that it makes the tail a little bit more like a tail. So to do that, we're going to do the following repeats. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then an invisible decrease. And then we're going to repeat that 2 times in a row. So it would be 2 single crochets, invisible decrease, and then 2 single crochets, and then another invisible decrease. That's going to be the start. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then an invisible decrease repeated twice. And then after doing that, we're going to do 5 single crochets and then another invisible decrease, and then repeat that again, 5 single crochets and then another invisible decrease. Okay, so we're going to do the same kind of repeat, but 2 times. Okay, let's just take it 1 stitch at a time though. We're going to start by doing 2 single crochets as normal. So there's 1 and 2. Next, we'll do an invisible decrease. And remember, an invisible decrease was going from the bottom. We go front loop, and then a single crochet under those with a twist and scoop to really make sure that you get under all those stitches. And then yarn over again and pull through 2 for our first invisible decrease. So 2 single crochets, invisible decrease. Next, we're going to repeat that again. So 2 more single crochets. The next stitch is going to be right here, so right there for our next single crochet. So there's 1 single crochet and 2, and then another invisible decrease after those single crochets. So again, we're going to go front loop, twist around, front loop, and then single crochet with our scoop and pull through 2. Okay, so there's our first part, 2 single crochets and an invisible decrease repeated twice. Now we're going to do 5 single crochets and then an invisible decrease repeated twice to get to the end of the round, which is going to be right here where the yellow yarn is coming out. So that's 5 single crochets. Our next stitch is going to be right here. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then an invisible decrease right here, front loop, single crochet with a scoop. Okay, so that's 5 single crochets, an invisible decrease, and we're going to repeat that process 1 more time to get to the end of the round. 5 single crochets, our next stitch is going to be right here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right here. 5 single crochets, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then an invisible decrease into our last stitch by going under the front loops. Front loop and front loop, and then single crochet by pulling it under. And then yarn over, pull through 2. That's going to be our last invisible decrease. Now you should have 18 stitches around for the end of round 9, which is going to be because we decreased 4 times. So our round before this we had 22, and now we have 18 because we decreased 4. Let's pull our loop out now, like this, and you can count your stitches if you'd like. You can kind of see how our piece has a little bit, this is where the tail is going to go. You can kind of see how it opens up in the back there, but it's mostly round other than that. And that's totally the shape that we want. Okay, so the next part we want to do is we want to attach the fins and the tail, and then we want to add our eyes. So let's start by attaching the fins and tail. So we'll start by grabbing our needle and grabbing our fins. I think it's a little easier to add the fins first and then add the tail afterwards. If you notice the fins, you're going to notice that they have just a slight kind of angle like that. So if I turn this one around, you notice they'd kind of be angled together like that. That angle is going to be very important. You want it kind of turning backwards like so on the body, so that the angle is pointing towards the back, towards the tail, which is going to be right after the stitch markers here, instead of pointing forward like that, because that's not really what a whale looks like. You know, it wouldn't be swimming backwards like that. So we're going to be facing it this way, so that's important to know. And you're going to notice that you'll have our 2 tail ends from both of our fins. We're going to start by threading the back tail end of our fin. So that's going to be the one on the inside of our curve. We're going to thread that onto our needle. I like using a crimped end darting needle like this. It just helps get in and out of hard to reach stitches, but it's not really super duper important in this pattern. In fact, you can just use your crochet hook to attach the fins, which I'll show you in the second fin that we do. So we're going to thread that onto our needle, and our first fin is going to go right at the end of our round. It's going to go actually into the very last stitch that you made. So here, let me show you on a finished one so you can kind of see. It's going to go right here. This is where the end of the round is, and it's going to go right at the end of our round right here. So we're going to take this tail end that's attached to the back of our fin, and we're going to put it right where our color changes change in the back, in the last stitch right here. We're going to pull it right through that, keep our loops away so we don't accidentally pull through a loop, and we're going to go ahead and pull it all the way through like that. Just let it loose there. Now our second end is going to go 2 stitches away. So 1, 2 away right here. I usually like to put my needle in there first so that I hold it into place, and then I can take my tail end and just kind of thread it onto our needle like so. So 2 stitches away, 1, 2, and pull it through like this. Okay, so now you're going to have these 2 tail ends coming out from the inside of your piece, and all you need to do is pull them tight enough so that the knots of the fin get pulled onto the inside of the body. So you'll kind of notice, don't pull it so tight, because sometimes you can pull it so tight that it actually pulls the fin through. It's crazy. But notice how I just pulled it just enough so that that knot kind of pulled in. And we're going to do that for both of these tail ends. So the knot just gets pulled in, 1 and 2. Now we're going to take these 2 tail ends and double knot them on the inside. So there's 1. You want to double knot them somewhat tight so it doesn't come out. Just pull a little tighter and then tight. And now once you have those 2 double knotted, you can cut the yarn pretty close like that. It's very easy to attach these onto our piece. I'm going to save these tail ends with our other tail end here because we'll use them for stuffing our piece up way later on. So I'll put those to the side. And that's going to be our first fin sewn on. Okay, so there's the placement for our first fin. The second fin is going to start 10 stitches away from the first fin. There's a bunch of different ways to find where this stitch is, but that's the way that I find it's easiest. So if you count from where the first fin that you added starts, it should be 10 away, should be the start of our next fin. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm counting where these white stitches are. So that's going to be the start of our second fin, I believe. I mean, that does kind of look weird, but let's go ahead and look on the top of our finished one just to make completely sure. So if this is where the end of our first fin was, it's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is going to be the start of our fin. This is just how you center it a little bit easier. Okay, so let's do it one more time here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So we're going to take our tail end. This time we're going to pull our tail end from the front of our fin, not the back. So this is the back. We want to pull from the front because we want it sewn on this way. So we're going to start by threading the front of our fin onto our needle and then pulling it inside of our piece. Then we'll go 2 stitches over, 1, 2, and do the same with the back side of our fin. Thread it into our needle and pulled through on the inside like that. And we're going to do the same thing as we did from the start of our fin. We're going to pull it just enough so that these knots get pulled inside like that. And we're just going to double knot it together on the inside. It's going to be 1 and 2 for a tight knot. And we can cut the yarn pretty close like so, and just place that off to the side and throw our tail ends together on the outside so we can use to stuff it into the piece. Okay, so that's going to be the front fins sewn on. Now we want to add our tail. The tail's a little bit trickier, but it's really not too bad. Basically what you want to do, let's get our white yarn out of the way, is we want to take our tail end here, and there should be 2 ends to your tail. 1 extra long end and 1 short end. We're going to start by threading the short end onto our needle like so. And we're going to attach this into our piece. Get our piece a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to attach this into our piece into the following stitches on the back of your piece. So after the end of the round where these white stitches start, we're going to put the one end of the tail right into this stitch. So that's going to be the third one. So there's 1, 2, 3 white stitches. Go into that third one right here and just pull that tail end on the inside like so. The next end is a little bit trickier. We're going to thread our other tail end onto our needle, and we're going to skip 2 stitches from where our first tail end is. So there's 1 and 2. We're going to go into that first stitch and then come out of the second one in between the 2. So we're going to go into this first one and out of this second one right here. It's actually best to go into the body first and then pull it out, so that way you can get the knot pulled on the inside. So I'll pull it through like this and make sure this is looped around in the right way. We're just going to pull it all the way through so that this knot gets pulled on the inside if we can. So we're going to pull it on through the knot. Next, we're going to come up through where the next stitch is. So this is where that last stitch was, and this is where our first tail end was. We want to come out through the stitch in between right there. Come up through that stitch, and I'm just going to keep this loop open and then pull that tail end just so that knot gets pulled out on the inside if I can. That's pretty good. And then we're going to pull this tight like that. Now we're going to go around the center of our tail. Just going to go around the center of our tail and then back in through where this tail end is coming out. So we're going to go around the tail and then in with our needle through that same stitch. So we're going around it, and that way it pulls it in, so it creates this tail into 2 different pieces. So around that tail, like that, and then we're going to pull our first tail end tighter, and pull the second tail end tight, and it'll pinch our end in like that. And I always like to kind of skew it and make sure it's in the right position. But once you have both these ends pulled tight, 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 like really tight, try not to break your yarn, but pull it nice and tight, and then double knot these 2 ends on the inside. There's 1, oops, there you go, 1 and 2. And we can cut this yarn nice and close like that. Okay, if you need extra help for that, just let me know in the comments. I know I kind of went a little quick there, but yeah, that's how you add our tail, and it should be centered between the two, and you can kind of see how, because we pulled it in like that, it pulls it in so that it really creates these as two separate little fins for a tail. Now, I usually like sewing the tail in like that so that the tail kind of gets pulled up, so it kind of like automatically like twists the tail up. But sometimes I like to do it the other way around so that the tail gets folded down, especially when I'm making things like dolphins. It's good to have it folded down so that way it looks like it's kind of jumping out of the water. But yeah, so if you want to do it the other way around, just sew it on upside down. Okay, so that is going to be how to sew on the tail and the fins. The next thing we want to do is add our safety eyes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab our safety eyes. I'm going to be using 6mm safety eyes in this video, but you can use anywhere between 6 and 8mm safety eyes. This one's got a weird little piece of plastic here, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of try to fix that. That sometimes happens with your eyes, so you sometimes need to cut just a little bit of the plastic off and just throw those ends off to the side so you can turn them into microplastics later. All right, so we're going to have these fronts of our safety eyes and the backs of our safety eyes prepared. So we're going to start by putting the front of our safety eye in where we want our eyes to be. The eyes we want to put, let's look at our finished piece so you can see exactly where you want to put it. Going from the front, one of the front fins, we're going to count over 1, 2, 3 stitches on the white. So from where the tail end is, 1, 2, 3, and then up 1 stitch, and that's going to be our first eye. The other side is going to be the same thing around. 1, 2, 3, and then up 1 stitch. It's actually going to take you up to the left a little bit. There should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches between eyes. So again, that's going to be from this side, 1, 2, 3, and then up a stitch right here for our first eye. I'm just going to place that in. I'm going to make sure my eyes are in place and exactly where I want them before I attach the backs of them. So that way, just in case I don't like where they're positioned, we can fix it. The other side, we got 1, 2, 3, up, and then over 1 right here. So it's going to be right there. And if we want to count over from our first eye, it's going to be 5 stitches away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is where our second eye is going to go. And that, I find, really centers everything exactly where you want it to be. Once you have the eyes on, you can take the back of the locking mechanism and lock it into the body. You can lock it this way if you want to. You can lock it this way if you want to. I have a video on how to lock safety eyes in really safely right here if you want to learn more about safety eyes. I always like to do it this way because it's a lot easier to put on and it never comes out. But if you're really worried about it coming undone, do it this way, just in case. I pretty much never do that though. So I'm going to put it on this way, and then I place it onto the inside of where the eye is, and then I take my back of my fingers, place it on the 2 ends, and then my index finger of my the opposite side holding the eye in place, and then I just kind of pop it in like that. We'll do the same with this other side. Placed into place and popped in. Highly suggested getting these ends that have like soft backs. If you have hard backs, you have to use a tool to attach your eyes, and it's just like the most annoying thing in the world. So highly suggested getting eyes like this with soft backs on it. I actually have some in the shop, so if you want to buy some from me and support this channel, you totally can. Just check out links in the description of this video. Okay, so that's going to be attaching the tail and the fins and adding our eyes. And now we can continue on in our piece with our last few rounds. So we're going to be on round 10, which is the second to last round around. Now you should have 18 stitches around. So if you want to make sure that you've got your stitch count correctly before continuing on to the next round. And I'm going to pull my stitch marker up here, pull our whale out of the way, and continue on to our last round. our second to last round. For our second to last round, we're going to do a single crochet into our first stitch and then an invisible decrease into our second and third stitch. And we're going to repeat that around 6 times around. That's going to make 6 more decreases, which is going to pull us down from 18 stitches down to 12 stitches. So it's going to start to pull our piece in, and then we'll do one more round of all decreasing, stuff our piece up, and sew it closed. So we're almost done. So for this repeat, again, we're going to do a single crochet into our first stitch. So we'll find our first stitch here and just do 1 single crochet into it. And then into the next stitch over, we're going to do an invisible decrease. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go under the front bar of the next stitch, and then take our crochet hook, place it under the next front bar of our stitch after right there. So you have 2 front loops, and then we'll yarn over and scoop under, then yarn over and pull through 2 for our invisible decrease. We're going to repeat that process 6 times around. So 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease all the way around. Our next stitch over is going to be right here after all these pulled out loops. So right here, and we're going to do our second repeat. Single crochet 1, and then invisible decrease 1 by going front loop, and then single crochet by scooping under, then yarn over and pull through 2. There's our second decrease, single crochet 1, invisible decrease 1, front loop, and then pull through and pull through. Single crochet 1, invisible decrease 1, front loop, single crochet. Single crochet 1, invisible decrease. Okay, last repeat, single crochet 1 and invisible decrease by doing front loop, and then single crochet like so. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 10 and our second to last end of our piece. We're almost done. We'll pull our stitch marker up like this. And before we continue on to the next round, I do want to stuff the piece up just a little bit right now because it's a little easier to stuff it up now than it is after this round. So I'm going to take, starting with all my tail ends here from all the ends that we cut, and we're just going to stuff that into the body because waste not, want not. And then we're going to take some regular stuffing and just put a little bit, just a little tiny bit into the body now, because it's just going to make our life a little bit easier after we finish the last round. But you don't want too much. You don't want to overstuff it at all, but just a little bit of stuffing to save us some space in our next round. Okay, and now is our very last round of our piece. Pull our stitch marker up, and in our very last round, you should be doing an invisible decrease into every single stitch around. Now, this round can be a little bit tricky because it's all invisible decreases, which can be kind of tricky. But just as a reminder, invisible decrease, front loop, single crochet, every stitch around. There should only be 6 invisible decreases total. So you only need to make 6 stitches. And let's go ahead and do it. Front loop, single crochet. Now notice how I'm doing this round. Before I had my finger in the piece like this to help hold everything together. But now, because the bottom is so closed, I actually hold it together like this and then just use my crochet hook to kind of get our position like so. It just makes it a little bit easier. You can also pinch it closed like that, which makes it nice and easy as well. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go into the next front loop, which is going to be right here. Front loop, and then single crochet. There's our second one. Here's our third, front loop, and front loop, single crochet. Next one, front loop, and front loop, single crochet. Just a few more, front loop and front loop, single crochet, and then our very last stitch right here, front loop and front loop, and then single crochet. Pull those out. Okay, so now you should only have 6 stitches around. If you want to count your stitches, just count from where the loop's coming out. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 is going to be right here. To finish up, we're going to cut the yarn. You don't need a very long end, about that long. This is just going to be used for sewing it closed in just a second. And then you can just pull it all the way out. You don't need to do a chain or anything. Just pull it all the way out. We'll pull our stitch marker out. You can just kind of like slowly pry it out, or you can be crazy and just pull it out in one fell swoop like that. That's pretty good. Okay, now we want to stuff our piece up a bit. I would stuff it with my my stitch marker, but I'm actually going to use this in a future video to use as a stitch marker, so I don't want to use that right now. Instead, I'm going to use just more stuffing, and we won't need too much more. You can see I just have a little bit, and this actually might be more than we need. I'm just going to take a small amount of it and start stuffing it into the hole. You can use the back of your crochet hook to help stuff it into the hole, but my crochet hooks are just a little bit too big for that. So what I like using instead is a pencil with the eraser. So I take the stuffing, I place it right over the hole, and I kind of scoop the stuffing in like this. And the eraser grips onto the stuffing and helps me get it into the center of our piece. You don't want to overstuff it. You just want enough stuffing so that when you squeeze it, it comes back out. So notice how I squeezed it and it like stayed into position, so it's flattened. That means it's just a little understuffed. But you want to be very, very careful about overstuffing your piece, because if you overstuff it, you'll start to see your stuffing through your stitches, especially if you crocheted too loosely. Now, crocheting too loosely or too tightly is something that comes with practice. So I do suggest you make a few of these whales to get the practice of crocheting loosely or tightly, just so you have like a basic a little bit more control over your yarn. Your first one probably will be a little too loose or too tight. So yeah, just take your time and try to crochet it a little tighter so that you don't see your stitches or your stuffing through your stitches. You see how these fins are kind of like curving, so he looks like he's waving? That's because I didn't work into the back loops, like I said in the beginning, where I showed the different ways to do the fins. If you did the fin the other way, it won't scoop up as much like that, but you can always fix this by just pinching it and stretching it into the right position. If you really want it held into position, you can use a mix of glue and water kind of pasted on there, and it will make it really crispy and hold into position really, really well. I don't like doing that personally, but it's definitely an option if you want to. Okay, so we have our piece stuffed up pretty well. Now we can finish up by just sewing it closed. To sew closed, all you need to do is take your needle and thread it onto the end attached to the tail end right there. And then take this end and go under the front loops of all 6 stitches around in your piece. If you want to count back from the end, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to go only under that first front loop. So go under all the front loops. So there's 1 and 2. Here's 3. There's 4, 5, and then our last one will be right here, number 6. We can take this tail end, and I like to just hold it right where the tail end is coming out and just pull it really tight, and it'll close up the bottom of our piece like that. Now we can take this tail end, go right back through the center, and then out through pretty much anywhere that you want on the side. I usually like to choose right where the seam is. And then just pull it out and pull it nice and tight, but don't pull it so tight that it's like pulled in like that. You want it to have a little bit of squish to it. And then you can just cut the yarn nice and close. It should not come undone. And then I notice how I just squish it, and then that end just pops right back into the piece. Okay, and that is going to be how, let's get these out of the way, to crochet a very tiny, little cute little whale. Oh my God, it's so cute. Make sure to like and subscribe. Okay, let's just look at it from different points of view now. Here it is upside down. Thank you so much for crocheting this pattern along with me. I hope you enjoyed making it as much as I enjoyed designing it, and I loved designing this pattern. It was really fun to come back to it after like literally decades of me crocheting, because this was one of the first things that I ever designed. If you like this pattern and you want to check out more of my whale patterns, including our narwhals, our beluga, our killer whale, and our dolphin pattern, check out the links in the description or at clubcrochet.com/whale. You can also find links for our complete Under the Sea season, which includes a bunch of additional themed patterns with ocean themed creatures. You can find that in the description down below as well. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to talk about? Make sure to follow us on social media if you haven't yet, and check out additional patterns in the playlists down below, and like and subscribe, check out the live streams, yada yada, who's it, what's it. Thanks so much for watching. Pasta la pizza, happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Bye. Goodbye. Happy hooking.